Back in January, I bought this popcorn popper so I can use it to roast coffee. Well, the first time I tried roasting, just as I hit first crack, the thermostat cut it off. So then I went inside and I bypassed the thermostat. It's no longer attached. It was attached to the cup on the inside that's like right here. Here, let me take it out and show you. So the cup extended here, and that was where the thermostat was attached. So I bypassed the thermostat. Well, when I was roasting and being wintertime, it was cold outside, and roasting outside, you don't smoke up the house, and all the chaff will blow away. I was roasting a couple batches earlier, so like you can see the chaff. Let me focus on it a little. Well, anyway, so I started melting the top portion, and here's the cup. You can see how it melted. So anyway, I ended up roasting without that on, but I took a tin cup, removed the sides, drilled some holes, and this way I was able to affix the cup on here. So by having an extended chimney, the chaff blows out, but not the beans. Now you can see how this moves in. When I do roast it and it heats up, it stops turning, so I usually hold it until it's snug. And then when it's snug, I can easily tip this over and pour out. Now, I roasted a couple batches before this video. So here are the two batches. There's a little bit of light, so let me stand on the other side and hopefully I'll block some of the light. Nope, but anyway, you can't see where the first batch ended and the second one I piled on top started. So even though this method, you don't have the roast as regulated as with a high dollar coffee roaster, it requires skill, you can get a consistent roast. Of course, it takes shorter time to roast in the summer than in the winter when you have colder air temperatures, and if it's too cold, it may not really roast much. And what happened was, when it was too cold and I was roasting at one point, the amps going through the wires melted the contacts in the switch, so the switch, you see, it's not snapping off, it only stays in the on position. So to turn this on, I have to always plug it in. I can't use the switch. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you're roasting in the winter and the air coming into the popcorn popper is too cold, that it doesn't roast as efficiently or doesn't roast it well at all. Okay, so now let's begin showing you how much coffee I put in this roaster. So this is 1 scoop of beans, and it actually takes 2 scoops. I found that 2 scoops is optimal. If I have too much, it may not roast as evenly because the coffee beans aren't churning as well, and if I have too little, it may, why waste roasting time when you can roast as much as you can, And now there's the second scoop. So now you can see how much coffee is in there. So now I'll plug it in. So you see this thing is turning, so I'll hold it in place until it gets hot enough. Sometimes it may get hot to my fingers before it's stuck in there. So if that's the case, I have a different way to contain it. So you see it's still starting to turn. So I will hold this to make sure it stays level. And then after a few seconds, it should be fine. Behold the chaff. So we just made first crack. If you can hear, it started to crack a little bit, and it will crack a little more. You can always take your spoon and move it around if you want it to help it too. It doesn't hurt it. I do is I don't just listen for first and second crack until I know how the roast is. I also look at the color of the beans as it's churning above. So now you can hear a lot more cracks and not as pronounced. So you're at second crack essentially. And the warmer it is, it goes from first to crack like seamlessly versus like a gap between. But I feel like the first two roasts were a little dark, so I'm going to cut this off in a moment. But I'm going to go here for now. So I cut it off while it's still cracking, and you can still hear it crack. And when I pour it into the bowl, you still hear it crackling. It's essentially still roasting while it's still hot. So I usually will take the spoon and stir it, and then any chaff that's left on, I'll basically try to remove. Now, I guess finer beans, the chaff doesn't stick like it does here, but these beans, I got them off the internet, and they are excellent. I've been getting a really good roast from this bean. Of course, everybody has their own tastes and what they like in coffee. Some like it dark, some like it mild. I like it medium, and some like the fruity essences, some like the nutty essences. This was advertised as fruity, and I was a little bit skeptical about buying it because I really was worried that like some fruity beans, it tastes like you put sour milk in them, you know. But to my surprise, I was impressed by how good these were. They didn't cause the milk to taste like I put sour, or the coffee to taste like I put sour milk. So now it's roasted, and you don't hear it crackling anymore. It's cooled off adequately. Well, there is still a little crack. And I'm not going to worry too much about the excess chaff that I can't easily remove, because the reality is it gets ground and it's fine. I mean, this coffee tastes really good with the chaff still stuck on there. So anyway, and then I can go ahead and start to, oh look, a bean fell on the ground and I crackled it. So now I can go ahead and start pouring it in here. Some people may wait till it fully cools off. If I see extra chaff, I'll just use a spoon on the edge to eliminate it. And you know, I'll keep adding more of the beans in here. Now, I know it hasn't fully cooled, but the reality is people act like roasting coffee becomes an exact science, the way it caramelizes as it roasts darker and darker, and everyone has their own tastes. And while you can't get the exact same roast, or sometimes you may feel like you roasted it a little dark or a little bit not long enough, you still get a really good roast with a popcorn popper regardless. And it's so much fresher. And this is a lot, you know, for just like a week or two, but I'm actually going to put some in some of the empty like K-cup pods and take to the office. I have coworkers who are coffee connoisseurs like me, so they're going to enjoy it. And I'm also going to be basically drinking my own this weekend. I ran out last weekend, and oh, the coffee I've been drinking has been a nightmare. Some stale store-bought coffee. You can always go wrong with that, you know. There is some truth when they say that people who roast their own coffee will never go back, because there is a big difference once you get the roast right and how you like it. You just realize how freshly roasted coffee is so much better than what you buy in the store. And then you can roast in smaller batches with a popcorn popper versus opening an entire pound of beans and letting it go stale after 3 or 4 days. So now what I'll do, and here's what you have to do if you want a good roast. You can take the ring from the inside and use it to cut out a paper towel, and you place it in here, and you close it. And you want it to breathe for 24 hours, well, 12 to 24 hours. Right now it's late in the afternoon. By tomorrow morning it should be fine for me to put the metal ring back in there. And this way, you let all the CO2 constantly be released because it won't taste good unless you let it breathe overnight. Now, when I put the ring back on, I could always have a sheet of paper on top instead of paper towel, and I can write the roast date on there or whatever. And these will make great gifts as well, you know. You have the roast on there, the date, the region, whatever you want, and you will be good to go. And this is a really good, simple, convenient way to roast coffee, as well as how you can easily regulate the roast and tweak your popcorn popper. You know, I mentioned things to be careful about is make sure you bypass the thermostat, and yet remove the portions that will melt, especially if it's in the dead of winter where it gets too cold, so you don't end up melting the contacts on the switch. But it doesn't matter, you know, as long as you can still run it. And roasting it outside on a warmer day seems to work well. You don't have to worry about smoking up the house or cleaning up after the chaff. The wind will just blow it around and onto the yard. And I hope you enjoyed this video, found it informative in the wonderful world of home roasting. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. So here are the 3 batches I had roasted earlier, and right after I made 2 more batches. Now the 2 scoops is a little more than one of these containers, so I have some extra beans over here. But I want to show you something. So these were 3 separate roastings, and as you can see, they're all dark. I didn't sit there and shake them to be evenly distributed. They're all the same darkness. So even though I didn't have a professional coffee roaster to regulate the roast, I got all 3 of those to be a nice darker roast. And this one, it's still hot to the touch, but you can see that you can't tell a difference where one roast ended and the next one began. I have had roasts where you could tell, but with this one you can't. And on top of that, looking at this one and then looking at that one, this one is a little darker than that one. So let me set these down side by side for comparison, so you can see how this is a nice dark color and this is a little more muted and lighter. So you can get the roast you want consistently with the right amount of skill level using a popcorn popper.